Rodney Jones, also known as the producer Lil Rod, is breaking his silence for the first time since filing a scathing civil lawsuit against now disgraced rapper P. Diddy. This comes on the heels of Diddy's team wanting that very lawsuit thrown out, filing a lengthy motion to do just that. But is it enough? And what's up with that federal investigation against him? The feds raided his homes almost 6 months ago. Where's the arrest warrant? Okay, so before we tackle all that, because there's a lot going on, we first have to mention the initial lawsuit against Diddy, who, by the way, goes by multiple names. P. Diddy, Puffy, Puff Daddy, all the above, but his legal name is Sean Combs, and today I'm gonna call him Diddy. So in November 2023, there was a bombshell lawsuit filed against Diddy by his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, who you probably know as the singer Cassie. This lawsuit was groundbreaking because it was the first time we heard any of the shocking allegations against Diddy. Cassie's lawsuit claimed Diddy physically abused her during their relationship and manipulated her, forcing her to take drugs and even forcing her to sleep with prostitutes. In one of the quickest resolutions I've seen, this lawsuit was actually settled outside of court just 1 day after it was filed. But it was too late. The damage was already done. A slew of other lawsuits then followed, many of them under the New York Survivor Act. That's the same ruling that allowed Cassie to file her suit. It stated that survivors could file civil suit against their alleged perpetrators for a 1-year time frame. And during this time, the statute of limitations didn't matter. Several other Diddy accusers used this to their benefit, filing civil suit for allegations dating back to the 90s and early 2000s. If you're familiar with Diddy's case, you probably recognize the names Joy Dickerson-Neal, Liza Gardner, and Jane Doe. Joy Dickerson-Neal alleges that Diddy assaulted her back in the 90s when she was a college student in New York. She says Diddy even recorded video of the assault and then passed it around to other people. Liza Gardner says she was also assaulted by Diddy in the early 90s in New York, and that Diddy later choked her to the point that she lost consciousness. As for Jane Doe, she says Diddy assaulted her when she was just 17 years old back in 2003. She says he flew her out to a recording studio in New York before sexually assaulting her. Jane Doe even includes some pictures in her lawsuit proving that she was in fact at Diddy's studio. These lawsuits all made some major news, and we even reported on them. But it was this next lawsuit, the one filed by Rodney Jones, that really caused a stir. Jones is also known as Lil Rod, who worked as a producer on Diddy's Love album. His civil suit against Diddy and some other high-profile names spans nearly 100 pages and includes pictures of what he calls some serious illegal activity. That's things like gun trafficking, drug trafficking, and racketeering, which Lil Rod alleges Diddy is responsible for. In fact, he says Diddy is the ringleader of this major scheme. According to the suit, Diddy himself sexually assaulted Lil Rod and forced him to have sex with a prostitute. These allegations made major news, and what followed made even more headlines: the federal raids on 2 of Diddy's homes in both Los Angeles and Miami. Those raids happened way back in March, and since then, even more civil suits have been filed against Diddy, and some also filed against his son. So that brings the grand total of lawsuits against Diddy to 9. One of those, as we mentioned, was settled outside of court. That was Cassie's lawsuit. But now Diddy is hoping to have another one thrown out, and that's Lil Rod's suit. Just this week, Lil Rod spoke out for the first time since that lawsuit was filed in an interview with Rolling Stone. He commented on Diddy saying, quote, "He's a monster. He'll do whatever is necessary to get exactly what he wants. He doesn't take no for an answer. He told me himself, I'll smack my mama." Anybody who can say that even jokingly is a monster. He's nothing to be played with. Lil Rod continued saying, quote, "For a person whose brand is Love Records and changed their name to Love and named their kid Love, he doesn't show love. He's just marketing." Lil Rod says he received major backlash since filing this lawsuit, saying, quote, "It's killing me. Here I am standing up for justice and for what I believe is right for my life, and I'm being punished." This interview was published just 1 day after Diddy's team motioned to dismiss the very suit. Diddy's team lays out their argument over more than a dozen pages. So let's jump right in with legal analyst and trial attorney Dina Saig-Dahl. So, Dina, the reason I wanted to talk to you today is about this new motion filed by Diddy's team. It's 33 pages, kind of long, going through and saying, here's why Lil Rod's lawsuit should be thrown out. So just from the start, taking a look at it, do you think they make a good argument?
The thing about the motion to dismiss is it is a very preliminary way to get a lawsuit kicked out of court. It almost always fails because it's not that hard to overcome a motion to dismiss. The purpose of it is essentially is that people shouldn't have frivolous lawsuits against them. You want them to have like enough facts to back them up, there to be connected to a law, that if you're going to take somebody to court and make them pay all those legal fees, that there is a decent, actual factual allegation that in connection to a law. So that's really the stage this lawsuit is at. Like, did Rodney Jones give enough facts? Was he specific enough in his lawsuit that they are actually connected to the laws that he's alleging here in this lawsuit? Diddy tries to make the argument that he's being too vague, he's not being specific enough, but it's very hard at this point to completely kick somebody out, because on the flip side, you don't want a frivolous lawsuit, but on the flip side, people should be able to have their day in court. And if he win this motion to dismiss, it would completely Rodney Jones right to have his day in court. So that's what the court balances here on a motion to dismiss. Are there enough facts so this is not a frivolous lawsuit? But on the other hand, if he does give enough, but maybe not enough to win in court, so to speak, but enough to show that more facts are going to be coming. This is a long road. Lawsuits are long roads. He should be able to have his day in court. And that's what the judge is going to look at when he's looking at both the complaint and the motion to dismiss.
To quote Diddy's motion, Lil Rod's lawsuit includes countless tall tales, shameless celebrity name drops, and irrelevant images. Yet despite all its hyperbole and lurid theatrics, the SAC, that's the second amended complaint, fails to state a single viable claim against any of the Combs defendants. And as you can expect, Diddy's legal team lays them out point by point. So let's start at the top. The first one they were talking about is the RICO enterprise that is alleged. Basically, they're saying that these allegations of RICO or racketeering don't really hold up. And this one's interesting to me because oftentimes we see this as a criminal charge, racketeering, or for instance, in the R. Kelly case, that's a big part of what we saw in the federal case there. So it's a little different that this is civil rather than criminal. What do you think about Diddy's team and their argument here?
I mean, he's obviously has good lawyers. He's trying the best he can to say, it's not enough just to say that this happened. You have to give enough as to what, where, when, how. That's really their Diddy's arguments. You're not telling us enough about when it happened to be able to even defend this later on. You're being too vague. That's essentially what Diddy's team is arguing. And to your point, you're right. This is civil rather than criminal. An important thing to remember is that the plaintiff has a lower burden. If Diddy ends up getting criminally charged under a RICO statute, I mean, that burden is beyond a reasonable doubt. The civil burden is just a preponderance of evidence. So you can have a situation kind of like you did with O.J. Simpson, where Diddy is acquitted on the criminal and still found liable here under the civil, because it's much easier for a jury to find somebody guilty in a civil lawsuit. So the fact that he has what will probably be a parallel track, if indeed he gets indicted like we think he will, he'll have the criminal and the civil, and they will reinforce each other. That's the interesting thing too. The fact that these are happening at the same time, you usually have a civil lawsuit come after a conviction, because in some ways it's easier. The civil plaintiff can just use the facts that came out at trial. in their complaint. The fact that these are happening at tandem will be interesting because they might come out with some facts in the civil discovery that the criminal, prosecutors will use at trial, and vice versa. It makes it doubly more difficult for Diddy to fight both of them at the same time.
The next point Diddy's team focuses on is sexual assault, writing that the second amended complaint filed by Lil Rod fails to allege any facts from which a plausible inference could be drawn that threats of force, fraud, or coercion were used to compel Jones to commit a commercial sex act, or that Jones is a victim under the statute. Basically, they're saying there's no way Lil Rod can prove that Diddy coerced him into allowing this alleged sexual assault to happen. A major allegation that we see not just in this lawsuit, but in all 9 that Diddy was up against is sexual assault. These allegations are over and over again is what we're hearing. And in this case, that's what Lil Rod alleges. So Diddy's team is kind of pushing back and saying that there's no proof that Diddy coerced Lil Rod. This is in when Lil Rod allegedly had sex with a prostitute at the hands of Diddy. Also something we saw in Cassie's lawsuit. She alleged that Diddy coerced her into having sex with a prostitute. This part is kind of tricky for me even because how would you prove coercion? So does Diddy's team have a strong argument there?
They may have a strong argument, but not at this point in the lawsuit, because this point in the lawsuit, Rodney doesn't have to have all of the facts to prove the coercion, because this is just starting. We have something in civil lawsuits called discovery, and that is where the facts come out, and he will be able to subpoena people for depositions. Imagine he's going to want to have witnesses testify. Other people who had maybe similar sexual assaults come and testify. That's where he's going to come up with all the facts. So the court doesn't expect him at this point in the stage to have all the facts to prove his claim. He just has to have enough for it to show that this isn't a frivolous lawsuit. Another big motion that will come out if this does pass the motion of dismiss, which I think it will, is what we call a summary judgment motion. That in a civil lawsuit is a time that could make the case go away. It is the more likely motion to make a case go away, because at that point, both parties are saying, we have all the facts. We've done all the depositions. We know all the facts. And assuming the facts are, to be as they are by law, like, I'm not liable. So at that point, Diddy could say, he has not, all the facts that he's shown here, none of them show coercion. They cannot, even a reasonable juror cannot think that this shows coercion. So by law, judge, you should dismiss it. And at that point, his argument he could win, but we haven't even gotten to the point that Rodney has those facts under his belt. He hasn't even started it. So it's not that argument in this motion, I don't think will be enough to overcome it, but that will certainly be what we'll see again in motion for summary judgment. And that's going to be the difficulty for Rodney, is during depositions for him to get enough facts to substantiate his claims to overcome what we will eventually see as a summary judgment motion.
The next portion of the motion still touches on the sexual assault allegations, saying, quote, Jones's sexual assault claim against Mr. Combs must be dismissed because Jones fails to plead the most basic facts, such as where and when any purported instance of assault occurred or what allegedly transpired. Now, this is something that Diddy pointed out in this recent motion that was filed, that this alleged sexual assault, Rodney Jones doesn't say when it happened. He doesn't say where it happened. So these are really important facts that we would potentially need. However, sometimes there could have been inebriation involved with sexual assault or something else like mind-altering substances, perhaps. How important is it, if this is carried on down the line, that Rodney Jones can say, this is where, this is when, and this is what happened?
It's important. It's going to be important, especially if it goes in front of a jury. I mean, you're asking a jury to, in this case, find somebody liable for potentially, millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. You have to be able to prove to that jury that you were harmed. That's really what he's arguing here, that he was harmed, and as a result, he is owed money. If you don't prove that harm, a jury isn't going to give you the money. So he is, even if there is a case where maybe he's inebriated, as you said, you still have to have enough corroborating evidence. Maybe you have to show photographs or other witnesses, or like we've seen in other criminal cases, like a pattern, like some sort of pattern, or who gave you the substances? Did Diddy give you the substances? You're going to have to show more, because just like in anything, people don't just take your word for it. This is a serious allegation, and the jury is going to take it seriously, and what's at stake is going to be a serious amount of money, and so he is going to have to show some corroboration. At this point in the motion to dismiss, that is not necessarily required, but it will ultimately. He will have to shore up these allegations with more specificity.
You mentioned pictures, and that completely rung an alarm in my head, because in the original lawsuit, there were a lot of pictures. That's one of the allegations, that Diddy recorded hundreds of hours of footage. So it is possible that Rodney Jones has this in his back pocket. But one of the main pictures that everyone was talking about back when this was filed in February is a photo of Lil Rod, Rodney Jones, and Cuba Gooding Jr. And he alleges that Diddy coerced him to have kind of a sexual relationship with Cuba Gooding Jr., at least for the moment there. He alleges that Cuba Gooding Jr. sexually assaulted him. Now, Diddy's team is saying in this motion, how is Diddy responsible for something someone else did? This I potentially see. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to prove that there was some sort of like conspiracy or connection, just an association, like a friend. If a friend of yours did something bad to somebody, of course, you wouldn't also be liable for it. They're going to have to show some sort of concerted coordination or action between the two of them. One of the things that Diddy also points out in this, that I think that Ronnie is going to have to overcome, is his own social media posts. I mean, that's the first thing we say as lawyers, like, you should not talk about the case because it will come back and haunt you in some ways. And it is true that anything he has said in social media, Diddy is alleging in this motion to dismiss, he's talking about, you need to pay me, that kind of thing. All of that, can be construed a lot of different ways. And that is going to be the defense. If this ever were to go to trial, that will certainly be the defense. Ronnie's social media posts will certainly be shown. And that is, to the counterpoint, the photos that Diddy has and videos that we may not have uncovered is going to be coming. And there may be like a battle between the social media posts and videos and photos. If I were Diddy, though, I wouldn't let this go to trial. There will be, especially if you have this criminal proceeding going on and you don't want any facts coming out, any witness testimony coming out that may harm you in a criminal conviction. So this might be kind of posturing at this point, hoping that there's a motion to dismiss. But if he ends up getting indicted, I think strategically, he should settle this case.
I do want to talk about this potential criminal case. I have one more question about Lil Rod, though. And this is the emotional distress that he alleges. All of these things he kind of laid out and said, it was distressing to me going through all of this. Diddy's point in the motion is saying, how can you prove emotional distress? Is that something that Lil Rod would have an easy time proving if and when this did go to a jury? Or is it kind of hard to prove emotionally what you're going through?
Okay, great question. Once somebody claims emotional distress, the defendant has a right to have that person evaluated by a mental health profession. That does not happen in a lawsuit unless you claim emotional distress. And then at that point, that expert, testifies however they want. You, as a plaintiff, you don't have, let's say, control over that in a way you have as in terms of how you present a case, what witnesses you want to put forward. So it's a little bit of a risky damage complaint, to be frank, for a plaintiff. Once you put emotional distress, your mental health becomes at issue, and you'll have an expert come in, they will evaluate you, they will testify as to it. So it opens up a little bit of a Pandora's box, but that's how that issue gets resolved for the court and for a jury.
Diddy's team also points to Lil Rod's allegation of a breach of contract, saying it's barred by the statute of frauds because any contract that cannot be performed within 1 year is unenforceable unless in writing. So legal speak aside, could Diddy's motion to dismiss really make Lil Rod's lawsuit go away?
I would be really surprised if it were completely thrown out. Could maybe one of the things that he's suing under be thrown out? Possibly. But motion to dismiss you very rarely have a complaint thrown out at this early stage. So he does, have good attorneys who are trying the best they can, but it is definitely a long shot for him to have it completely dismissed.
There you have it. This motion probably isn't going to have the lawsuit thrown out. So all that leaves us with is debatably the most important topic involving Diddy. And the question on everyone's mind for months and months now is when and if Diddy's getting arrested. Talking about his criminal case, we can't even really say it's criminal yet because he hasn't been charged or indicted on any of these allegations. We know that there were federal raids, but then it kind of got quiet on that front. So what are your thoughts there? Do you think that he is going to be arrested and indicted?
I mean, we heard some rumors about people who said that there were going to be witnesses at the grand jury. If that's true, and that means that they actually convened a grand jury and they're going through that testimony and that process, that could take a while. This is a multi-state investigation, things that occurred in multi-states. His enterprise is very large. There's many people involved. A grand juries involving that can take a long time. So I don't think we're at the point where it's been so long that we can say, oh, nothing's going to happen. I think that based on even just, now we've seen the Cassidy video, gave her, really substantiated her allegations. So based on that and the raid, and the fact that we're hearing that they had some witnesses for the grand jury, I think it's likely that there's going to be an indictment, and it might be soon, or it might still be a month or two away.
So do you think that right now it's possible that they are going through with grand jury proceedings and we just don't know about it?
Yes, I do. I mean, grand jury proceedings are secret. That is the point of it. We don't know about it until after the fact. So I think that is very likely that is what's happening right now.
Just a quick reminder that so far, Diddy has not been charged with anything criminally and only accused of wrongdoing in civil suits. He's also said publicly that he denies all those allegations. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.